Hello, it's Hebby, and welcome back to making every Wings of Fire dragon into a plush, unless you're new here, in which case this is a challenge series which has a few rules. We will be making every dragon character in Wings of Fire who, through an extremely subjective mechanism I have determined is relevant to the plot enough for me to make into a doll, or I have a weird personal attachment to. And we'll be doing it alphabetically, mostly. For each design, I will be making my own amalgamation of the character's book description, graphic novel appearance, pre-existing merch, book cover or official art, and a healthy dose of what I feel like. Each plushie takes a really long time to make, of course, which is why I can't make them all, because there's 400 characters, and some of them are mentioned for 3 seconds, and some of them just look extremely alike. But there's a wild round sheet for that too. Here's the update. These are the tallied votes from the comments section of these videos. Whoever gets the most votes next time we come across a letter that doesn't have any characters in it, I will make them into a plush ceremonially. So far in this challenge, we have made Albatross, Anemone, Auklet, Arctic Burn, Blister Blaze Blue, Battle Winner, My OC, Calamity, Chameleon, Coral Cricket, Clearsight Clay, Cliff, Ruby Carnelian, Massacre, Receptacle, Dune, Dusky, 5.5 feet of Darkstalker, the 28 unnamed sons of Queen Coral, plus the 3 named ones who aren't on a book cover, Flame, Fatespeaker, Ochre, Squid, Viper, Freedom Fathom, Indigo, Glory, Guild, Tau, Cobra Lily, Darkstalker for a second time, and Grandeur. You can download this pattern for free and make your own. It's linked in the description and publicly posted on my Patreon. Although some of the last plush have been out of order, we're actually still in the letter G, and it's time for Glacier. Yippee. So, Glacier. She's one of those queens who's been around for the longest time in the background of Wings of Fire, and until the 14th book we knew relatively little about her, so this video will contain spoilers for the 14th book of Wings of Fire, The Dangerous Gift. That's your spoiler warning, or you could probably watch for 10 more seconds, cause first I'm gonna describe her to you. Ahem. White. Yeah, this is another Icewing, and apparently that means there can be almost 0 visually distinctive traits for her. Look at her graphic novel appearance. Other than this swag crown she has in the Guide to the Dragon World, although this crown is also bad news, we'll get to that later, she doesn't look very distinct from the other Icewings. And in her base-filled reference, she appears with grey top scales. There is no evidence for this in text, she's just white, but look at the disparity between these various appearances of her. I'm inclined to agree with the portrait of her here as the most authoritative design, but well, I've actually already designed many of the other Icewings we're doing in this challenge, and have run out of colour schemes that allow for this predominantly plain white with slight turquoiseness. So she's grey in my design, or her spine is. It makes her look older and more stately too. Now I'm going to recap the Glacier lore in order of its reveal to the viewer. Up until the 14th book, what we know about Glacier is as follows. She is a shrewd queen allied with Blaze in the War of Sandwing Succession, but preferring to do most of the fighting for her. Glacier is promised a stretch of frigid land between the Kingdom of Ice and Sand for her participation in the war by Blaze, but she also gets the benefit of a helpless, permanently indebted Queen of the Sandwings. Glacier is also vicious, ripping the wings off a Skywing assassin sent to kill Blaze whilst they were still alive. Great. She's the one queen that the Dragonets of Destiny refuse to meet whilst they're doing laps around the continent in Arc 1, before the brightest night, which is extremely wise, as in the epilogue to The Dark Secret she has a brief POV in which it's revealed she would kill all the Dragonets of Destiny if they didn't agree with her. She also dies. Spoiler. That's in the 10th book, but if you've read 14, you've probably read 10 unless you need remedial counting classes. So yeah. She was killed off-screen, at first, by Darkstalker via the use of his incurable animus plague. But we don't really get to know about that until book 14, which is why I've drawn her in this scene in one of her seldom occurring moments of plot relevance before she dies. She's right next to me, isn't she? Sorry, Your Majesty. You just go back to doing what you were doing. This is why I don't usually draw dragons into the foreground of my art that I use for these videos. It's a little awkward when I have to stand next to them and talk about them without, talking to them. Anyways, let's continue. Glacier is described as huge and majestic, so I think it's fitting that she be made the double size pattern. But I haven't made this size as an Icewing before. Actually, we haven't made any non-unzippable ice wings in the main challenge at all. This is the second ice wing we've encountered ever. What a special occasion. Glacier, I think, is actually quite a good character. It's revealed to the reader very slowly that she might have more depth to her characterization than the leader of a highly organized tribe with extreme class disparity and a super oppressive caste system enforced by constant observation and comparison between dragons. The first moment we really get to see of her more in-depth character is when Blister challenges Blaze to a duel for the throne. And despite what Glacier has riding on the outcome of the war, the land she's been promised, and the threat of having Burn or Blister as a neighbouring queen, that would be terrible, she refuses to fight on behalf of Blaze and simply wishes her good luck, in order to be fair to the tradition of things. When we see her again, she is leading Winter to the Diamond Caves, where he will undergo a deadly trial and either kill his brother or be killed himself. Glacier is far more open-eared than Winter had given her credit, and she listens to his story as they fly, which his parents were entirely uninterested in hearing at all. Winter finds her to be more sympathetic than she appears, and when we see her perspective in Book 14, it's revealed that Glacier had a respecting and close relationship with the Sandwing animus, Jerboa, showing that Glacier could understand dragons outside of her own tribe, although it seems she has a thing for sandwings. 2 in a row, don't know what that's about. Anyways, Jerboa confided in Glacier and valued her guidance, and Glacier knew not to abuse Jerboa's animus powers and destroy their relationship. But I have a lot to say about that in a couple of letters when I get to J. Oh boy. Anyways, this kind of reveals more of a sensitive and considerate side to her personality, which really only shines through tiny cracks in her icy exterior. Although she hates Nightwings, like despises them. Which brings me to Glacier's swanky crown. How drip-tastic. I'm modelling this in VR using a free program called Adobe Medium. I'm basing it off the portrait image in the Guide to the Dragon World, but also giving it my own opinion. This Snowfall describes it as so large and heavy it gives her neck pains, but this big trinket is actually secretly a different kind of pain in the neck, in that it was enchanted, without anyone else's knowledge, by Queen Diamond 2,000 years ago in order to give its wearer, the Icewing Queen, terrible nightmares about Nightwings, which would in turn induce paranoia and distrust of the entire tribe. This was to ensure no future queen would forgive the Nightwings for their crimes. Which, I don't know, maybe that means Queen Glacier's hatred and fear of Nightwings actually stemmed from this stupid crown being put on her head and not, her actual feelings of disgust and dislike. Although, perhaps you could say that the crown's enchantment fed off of a feedback loop of the two tribes hurting one another regardless of its malicious magic, because Snowfall, wearing Glacier's crown, does have a legitimate reason to be distrustful of Nightwings, as they were just in a battle together which killed at least a few of them, and, I cannot stress enough, they killed her mother. Queen Glacier was the first dragon to catch Darkstalker's plague, and she died helplessly sick before the eyes of her 3 daughters. So maybe the crown simply increases the thoughts of existing paranoia. Maybe. Regardless, it is pretty swag.
That is not houseware.
I have many shiny bits in order to bring it to fruition, as Snowfall describes the crown as a glittering diamond-encrusted monstrosity, covered by clusters of crystalline jewels, encircled in silver arches, and topped with long spikes like icicles. As soon as Snowfall puts it on in the scene where we get to see the most of it, she immediately thinks, the Nightwings can't be trusted, they want me dead, they want all of us dead. If I can find a way to wipe them out first, I should. Perhaps Glacier does have this level of murderous thoughts, but she simply contains them better, or perhaps Snowfall was already a little crazy and the crown has added to that. But Glacier doesn't seem to be actively and purposefully trying to wipe out all the Nightwings until she realizes they're involved in the war on Blister's side. Regardless, the crown ends up destroyed as Snowfall finds it hideous and its magic. A little rude to find it hideous, it's not so bad. But the magic was pretty evil, and I'm not sure how to factor it into my analysis of Glacier's own evilness. Although, she has other traits which can be dark too. Strict adherence to tradition isn't necessarily a good characteristic. I mean, I did mention the Diamond Trial of Death, but even more commonly, the traditions that Icewings hold are generally negative for many Icewings on a personal front. putting them under immense psychological strain to rise up the ranks, and it separates many Icewings away by bloodline, because your position in the ranks is based on the ranks of your parents as well, unless you've been given a special exception. There's also a very strict system for identifying rank and therefore how much tail kissing is required to pass through a social situation with another dragon. And let me just be clear, I definitely struggle with social situations, this would be actual hell for me. But some of the other Icewing traits I think are very positive. Icewings are always pushing themselves to achieve. They believe in being objective and in being the best dragons they can be. Queen Glacier believes this is due to the strict way in which the tribe is raised. And she's probably not entirely wrong. Sure, the gift of order in the Icewing wall of rankings is pretty overwhelming, and Icewing society suffers from a punitive system of governance with very little reward for excellence and all the punishment for failure. But I don't know. Have you ever met someone who's just never had to do anything hard in their life and nobody really gives a freezing frostbolt anyways, so they literally never experience even basic difficulties that other people go through, and they're just the most annoying people in the whole world? It's like they were permanently mentally stunted by never needing to achieve anything difficult, like getting good grades or doing a good job at work. That might be what the Ice Kingdom would be like in Glacier's nightmares if she broke tradition. I mean, I have had my rant about Squid, the false dragonet of destiny Squid, and have you ever noticed he's a Sea-Wing, not an Ice-Wing? Maybe if they'd given Squid the left out all night in a blizzard trick of parenting in order to toughen him up, he wouldn't be an adult-sized toddler. What I'm saying is that maybe there's some kind of middle ground, and for lack of a better word, perhaps the Icewings will warm up to the concept of giving actual rewards for success, and their society will trend towards a more equal one now that Glacier is dead. Not that it's her actual fault that society is structured the way it is. That was clearly in place 2,000 years ago during the time of Darkstalker. Anyways, it can be very hard to change a system which you are otherwise obedient to, even from Glacier's position of power. Although she does make one notable exception to the rules on her deathbed, declaring that there will be no Icewing War of Succession and that Snowfall will be queen after her death, and that her sisters, Mink and Crystal, must promise not to challenge her, so that Icewings can have lasting peace. And, well, that would be a good change for the future of all the dragon tribes, actually, moving in the right direction with probably a little less blood involved. Although, as mentioned briefly, in Arc 1, Glacier hears from Blaze that the Dragonets of Destiny want to ally with Blister, and Glacier obviously considers this a no-no, so she commits to talking to them and or murdering them if they don't say exactly what she wants and agree to support Blaze. Oh, plus she goes on a rant about vengeance on the Nightwings, saying, "We're going to kill all of them if we must. I have no objection to the idea of wiping out the Nightwings." So in light of all of that, Glacier gets an evil score of 6 out of 10 for semi-accidentally perpetuating a war for almost zero benefit to the Icewing tribe, upholding a classist system, for being dragon racist maybe but maybe not at the behest of a cursed crown, and for torturing at least one Skywing to death. Not the nicest move. But gotta get your anger out somehow though, especially as a repressed Icewing. But she gets some points removed for preventing a second war and being actually a pretty okay mother. And now she's done, and I'm glad for it. Although I was looking directly at the reference picture for Glacier's cursed crown, I think I accidentally made it look like the Desert Tiara, which is a Sandwing royal heirloom.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture.
Anyways, I actually briefly had Glacier put on my wild round sheets because, frankly, the Icewings drive me slightly insane. I do not know how people who have only read the graphic novels manage to get through Winter's book, because it is borderline impossible to tell the difference between any Icewing at a glance. If you don't already know who this is and what they are going to say from reading the books, this is super confusing. Basically every Icewing is described as white on white with blue eyes, but I had to pull Glacier off the back burner because I really do like her character, but really, so many standard white dragons. Now, as a quick break to deliver some punishment to my least favourite dragon in this whole series, Whirlpool, we'll be using our Blaze plushie as a form of torture. Glacier herself had to suffer through this, except Whirlpool will have no escape. Blaze will talk to him about her inane life and beauty routine until the madness sets in. Thank you to my Whirlpool Hate Club members: Phoenix Fire, Ninja Kitty Awakens, The Wait Saranac Fluffle, Bird Yeggling, Danielle Oliver, and that Dragon Toon Fuzz. Now Glacier's finished, I am happy to have a larger sized Ice Dragon plush. And although we have this large one now, I want the opposite. I want a tiny one too. Because we're not completely finished with the video, as Glacier needs one more dragon to go alongside her. Mink. Mink is Glacier's youngest daughter, although exactly how young we're going to get into in a minute because it makes no sense, but first we'll recap her character. Mink is described as white, what a shock, but with grey patterning, so I'm interpreting that somewhat creatively, as probably way more grey than intended. As for Mink's personality, she is generous and warm for an Icewing, wishing to attend Jade Mountain Academy when she grows up so she can make more intertribal friends. She's close with a friend of hers named Polar Bear, and she also looks to Snowfall, her older sister, for support a lot and has named her pet Arctic fox Snowy after Snowfall. That was pretty easy to recap actually, she doesn't do much else. Now for the age and scaling dilemma I promised, because Mink is a prime offender of the complete wackiness going on with the Wings of Fire scaling. Okay, so Mink is an actual infant. Here she is gurgling and being a baby at approximately ankle height in the official colouring book next to Snowfall here. Well, what if I told you this was a lie? Mink behaves exactly the same as Cliff or Orklet, but she's actually approximately 4 times their age. 4 times or more. Like, to point this out even harder, here's Bumblebee, a dragonette literally born in front of the main characters of Arc 3. I will be doing her, by the way, but as everyone knows, she's a purse accessory to Snudoo. Anyways, this minuscule speck is 1 or 2 months old at the maximum, but could be pictured as young as 3 seconds, and drawn exactly the same as Mink is at, get this, 2 years old. That is 12 to 24 times as old as this dragonette, and the scale is exactly the same. Are you telling me that a baby dragon is born, looks like this, and then for 2 whole years grows like 5 centimeters, and then in 2 more years is suddenly as large as Winter is here on the cover? Because if you've forgotten, Winter is only 4 years old. Like, that has to be a mistake. In fact, I feel confident in announcing that it is definitely a mistake because Snowfall, the character Mink is next to in this picture, meets Cricket, the character Bumblebee is next to, and she doesn't note that Cricket is minuscule compared to her, although she does note that Bumblebee is meant to be tiny, and that Bumblebee is a super young dragonette, which makes sense because she's like 2 weeks old at max during their meeting, because it's just after leaving the poison jungle. I know I'm harping on about it, but I thought it was pretty funny. I had this same problem with Dusky, whose size I feel is definitely a mistake too, even if his age is not. And also with Anemone, who seems sort of whack with the ages too. For the record, Mink, Dusky, and Anemone are all the same age. Anemone is described to be small for her age, but is still about half the size of Tsunami, and not that much smaller than Turtle, who is 5 years old, by the way. Whereas Dusky is described to be small enough to fit in a human being's lap as he is only marginally larger than Freedom, and as shown, humans are this big compared to averagely sized dragons. Or are they this big? Or maybe this big. Anyways, if you wanted to make a scale chart, it would probably look something like this disaster based on canonical description. Though, if we're talking behaviour irrespective of the scaling issue, Dusky was traumatised and may have other reasons to be acting quite baby-like, and Anemone was raised close to Queen Coral and is a princess, so may be acting more mature. But there is not really a logical excuse for how these dragons appear. Like, just look at these. These dragons are meant to be the same age in at least appearance and physicality, if not mental state. But even if you consider the mental state, Mink is also a princess like Anemone is. And if you think Sea Wings just age faster than Ice Wings, or royalty is sheltered from maturing for Ice Wings, it still doesn't track. Because Winter, Icicle, and Hailstorm, who are also princes and princesses, are mentioned to be left to fend for themselves in a blizzard at 2 years old. And in this scene, they are playfully arguing with each other about polar bear hunting during a flashback, where they come across as young teenagers, whereas Mink, who is the exact same age as they are, can hardly walk, talks in a juvenile baby voice, clearly refuses to hunt prey as she feels bad for killing things, and barely even understands the permanence of death. it might be at least possible to imagine that these characters are treated in a different way for whatever random reason, which doesn't really make sense because the Ice Wings have the most strict parenting and childhood of any dragon tribe, especially royal Ice Wings. And Winter even mentions he literally never had toys that weren't functional as a baby dragon. But whatever. Maybe there is some reason which can be derived from canon somewhere to explain why Mink was raised completely differently and is also somehow the size of a peanut despite her age. Maybe she didn't eat her vegetables or something. But my personal solution is to just go purely based on vibes and ignore the canonical age, making her about 6 to 9 months old. Anemone may be technically the same age, but she gives me young teenager to tween vibes, so that's what I think she is. And Mink does not give me 13-year-old energy, she gives me sticky-handed 5-year-old energy. And so, to me, that is what she is. I will suffer no further debate on the scaling of this particular dragon. I made her drastically smaller than the other 2-year-olds because that's the vibes. Enjoy this pea-sized dragonette, because she's way cuter this way anyhow. Although she wears Glacier's crown at some point, and despite the fact Snowfall notes it's too big for her, I mean, is it too big for her, or is it crushing her? So yeah, I don't know how she does that without breaking her neck and legs. It does make her go crazy and hate on the Nightwings, but since that's all the crown's influence, and unlike Glacier, she doesn't act on these impulses, I'm striking it from the record. She's an instant 0 out of 10 for evil. Kind of all the baby dragons who aren't cursed in some way are a 0 out of 10. I mean, what do they even do? Mink is literally out here eating snow and putting crayons up her nose. Her pet fox is even on the wild round sheets. It's not the first fox on there, because Dinner the Fox, Stone Mover's enchanted not quite pet fox, is significantly ahead of her in the voting system, but it's there. Apparently Mink is a talented snow sculptor. I've never seen snow, it doesn't really snow in my country, but maybe someday I'll go to somewhere it does snow and take my little Minkling with me. I accidentally gave this thing a mohawk. Whatever. Now they're both up on the shelf together, and Mink is even right beside Peacemaker. Okay, I'm going to colour in this page I've been using as an example now. Oh wait, it already is coloured in, because they're Ice Wings, and all Ice Wings look like this.
Rolling flashbang.
Shout out to all the white on white dragons out there, which I will be forced to do eventually. And here's a speed paint warning, as the screen may flash. Thank you so much for watching, people. I've really enjoyed making these two characters in particular, even though they have a distinctly underwhelming colour palette in canon. Have an awesome day or night. I appreciate your support in this plushie challenge. I really love continuing to make them and to show them. The baby Icewing pattern will be up after this video sometime, alongside all my other Wings of Fire patterns, which you can download for free, so everyone can make their own Mink in precisely whatever size satisfies them. And of course, a large Glacier to go with that order. And a huge shout out to my Patreon members, my current members, and anyone who has ever supported me with likes, comments, or their YouTube subscripy whilst doing this challenge. It means a lot. Shout out to Kimber, ADH Dream 1409, Kit, Samuel Sanchez, Mono Deer, Aninka Lamasson, Grey, Phoenix Fire, I Like the Dumb Bunny Shrimp, Fennec is Here, Poppy Willow, Indigo, Woilies, Fantasy, The Starving Child, Ninja Kitty Awakens, Caroline T, I Love My Fuzzy Kitten, Vanessa Ananara Burrows, Vela, Rhythm the Raptor, Aliana, Miffy, Victoria Toucan, Racing Wolf, Grey Malkin, Gatto Catamoose, The Wait Zeranek Fluffle, Anonymous Running Dragon, Danger Noodles Are Cool, Erin Donahue, Carol, Zilly Rabbit 87, The Fairest Rubber Duck, Celeste Tazza, Gordon Young, Stuffed Tails Fursuits, Connie, Nix, Hazel Williams, Keegan Evans, B, Crafty6809, Alex Allen, The Christmas Lady, Icariel, Bird Yeggling, The Creature's Burrow, Danielle Oliver, Kayla Hedrick, Audrina Bailey, Meshtail, Salami Moth Danny, Cat Brain, Lots of Pizza, Elena Spivey, Sandra, Tea Party, Aspen, Cozy Wozy, Nika Fadowsi, Shadow, Harley, What's My Name, Mihir, Tommy, Copa, Acheron, Beef Stew, and That Dragon Toon Fuzz.